finding your rhythm is really important because especially like real estate, it's kind of all on you, especially if you're not working for an office where there's like a leadership structure you can follow. Finding your rhythm is really important. So for me, that's waking up early and getting all the urgent tasks just done, kind of hitting the tennis ball into someone else's court. So then I can then spend the 9 to 5 period where it's business hours, actually making those phone calls, building relationships, doing cold calls, things like that. So that's what works for me. Some people, it might be staying up late and getting all their things out of the way, or it might be doing things on the weekends. But finding your rhythm, at least for me, works well because exercise in the morning, clear head, and sometimes I find when I kind of fall out of whack of that is when something might be forgotten or I might not make the best management decision. And so my rhythm is, I guess, a kind of secret ingredient, secret sauce, if you will.
Welcome to the Property Management Podcast. I'm Kylie Walker. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I just want to say that I am super grateful that I get to meet so many amazing people in our industry and have conversations like the one you're about to witness today. And I know I say this every week, but the topic today is pretty amazing. We're talking about the new era of property management entrepreneurs. And as the property management landscape evolves, we are actually witnessing this new breed of entrepreneurs coming through who are redefining the industry with innovative approaches, cutting edge technology, and a fresh perspective on client service. These trailblazers are not just managing properties, they're transforming the entire business model to create more efficient, customer-centric, and profitable ventures. Now, joining us today is a prime example of this new era of property management entrepreneurs, Chester Toohey. Chester is the founder and director of Toohey Property Management, a forward-thinking company based in Brisbane. And his company is quickly becoming known for its innovative solutions and exceptional service. Now, Chester is only 21, if you can believe that. But he is a true born and bred entrepreneur and actually started a short-term rentals business in Brisbane at the age of just 18. Now at 21, he is thriving with his new venture in long-term rentals, and he has built Toohey Property Management from the ground up, emphasising a client-first approach and leveraging technology to streamline operations. He is wise beyond his years, and his vision and leadership have set new standards in property management and are a source of inspiration for many aspiring property management entrepreneurs. He's humble, hardworking, and he is not afraid to ask for help and has lent on some of the best coaches, trainers, and mentors in the industry. But the thing that I really love about Chester is his energy, passion, and enthusiasm, something many of us find waning after years in the property management industry. So if you are looking for a bit of motivation, education, and just a reminder of how good property management really can be, this is a must listen episode. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Chester as much as I did. Take a listen. Chester, welcome to the Property Management Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Now, I'm really excited to chat with you today and learn more about your story. So before we dive in though, can you share with my audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started in property management?
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the introduction there, Kylie. I really appreciate it. I'm very glad and grateful to be here. So thank you for having me. My background, so I started in short-term rentals, so managing Airbnbs, more of a software-based approach, which we can go into a bit later, and then saw what was going on in property management, really appealed by it, and looked like something that I wanted to do, had the longevity there. So I've kind of ended up in the property management industry from that, and I'm loving every minute of it.
That's good. Now, can you share with our audience a little bit about your age? Because you're very young, and which is, I guess it's not, I shouldn't say I think it's unusual for somebody so young to be in your position, starting their own business and in the property
Mm.
management industry. So share a little bit about that story.
So I'm 21, as much as it's usually a difficult question to answer. It comes with a bit of prejudice sometimes in the industry. It's definitely worked against me sometimes, but I started the holiday rental business when I was 18 with a business partner. And we definitely leveraged off that as much as we could, being young and in business. A lot of people kind of took us on for that, willing to give us a crack. And, it definitely made us work a lot harder, having something to prove and shaking things up. I think it meant that we didn't really have a standard or anything to go off. So we just worked our absolute hardest. We paid for the furniture to furnish these properties, different things like that. It was just all about service. It wasn't even really about making money. It was just doing the best we could, right? And making money was just a bonus at the end there. But I definitely had experiences with people where I'd, be harassing them for 6 months, texting them, trying to catch up, and finally we meet and the elevator's doors open, they burst out laughing because I didn't know I was meeting with a bunch of school kids or different things like that. So I've had my fair share of dealing with that, but I think it only makes you kind of more motivated in the end, or at least it does for me.
I think that's fantastic. I think I've dubbed you like the new breed of entrepreneurs in property management. So I think that's amazing that you've set out at 18 to start your own business. So what has been the traction? Why property? Why property management? And yeah, tell us a little bit how how you were, I guess, introduced to this space for business.
So interestingly enough, actually, it kind of came about looking on realestate.com, as everyone kind of finds themselves doing every so often. You're seeing places for rent. Oh, this one's $700 a week, but then hang on, I can put that on Airbnb for $2,000 a week, or the same apartments being booked for $2,000 a week. So saw a bit of an opportunity there. And like I mentioned before, it was more of a software-based approach, right? If it's something that we can um, rent a property out, plug it into some little software stack that puts it on these booking platforms like Airbnb, Booking.com, distributes the property out there, and then brings guests through to pay for a higher return. Ended up going down a bit of a rabbit hole, the general tenancy agreements, different things like that, no subletting without permission of the owner. So we came out the other side of that with a partnership model where would partner with the property owner in a kind of new venture where you're turning the property into a business almost, and we take a share, so 20% of the management fees. Well, our management fee was 20%, and that's like the minority share of the income really is what's kind of happening there. A very new approach.
So you created the software just or it's a software that you plugged in your model into.
So people in the industry call it a tech stack, which is pretty much just like Frankensteining a bunch of different things together. You might get your pricing from this soft with this company and your communications from this company and different things like that. And then at the end of the day, you just got to make sure that the economics adds up. But it's a very complicated business model. Once everything, there's the guest communication, organizing, cleaning, different pricing, all that kind of stuff going on. But some of the best companies in the industry invest heavily in their tech stack and build it themselves and kind of use that as a unique value proposition. But from from my perspective, and also the mentors that I would often speak with, if you can compete Frankensteining your own kind of software together, then that's an advantage, right? Because you're saving money and it's it's the best way to do it, really, especially if you're starting, right?
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of technology and software, and automation is a big thing that I try to automate wherever I can. I've got a couple of businesses, obviously an online business as well as a traditional property management business. So I can, yeah, totally. And
Mm.
sometimes I get blinded by all the shiny new things.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of really take a step back and look at your business and go, okay, what is the ultimate, what is the end goal? Is it, am I trying to, save having an extra team member? Am I trying to enhance my customer experience? And is that how you kind of look at at that tech stack yourself as well?
Mm. Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. I think people do lose sight of what's really important in real estate in general, because short-term rental, as much as people kind of look at it as software, it really is just, it's property management and hospitality combined is the best way to put that, right? And people end up, I always say, I think the best way to put it is people play dress up in the industry. You know, they need the office, they need this, they need that. But at the end of the day, business is relationships, and your software should be amplifying those relationships. So whether that's providing a better portal for your owners to see their returns on investment or different things like that, but that's where your investment should go in a company, I think.
Absolutely. So talk to me about the shift then into out of short-term rentals into building your own property management portfolio. What was the decision behind that? And was it scary? Like, were you, and I know you've lent on a lot of people in the industry to help, guide you through this journey. But tell me how you got started first, and then we can talk a little bit more about the specifics of where you are at right now.
So, bit of an interesting one, actually. Because we didn't really have a bit of a precedent to go off in short term, it's a relatively new industry, or at least a relatively new business model, right? This kind of decentralized hotel. With the mentors that I'd spoken to, it was always focusing on relationships, right? So we'd call out property owners once a fortnight because they're a lot more valuable as a client. You generate 10 times the amount as you would as a long-term rental, right? So we'd be calling them even with good news. So, hey, there's been heavy rain recently. Just thought I'd let you know your guests are happy. There's been no refunds. Everything's all good. So those relationships built up really well, and it ended up where property owners would say, hey, I've moved out of the short-term rental phase of the property. I want to put it back onto long-term, whether that's because of the bank or different things like that. But I want to stay with you guys because I really like your service and I like your relationship. So that's when we began to explore the long-term rental idea, and it just grew organically from about the last year or so. There's been a significant amount of pressure on the short-term rental industry. I think a lot of that comes from lack of legislative infrastructure. I think especially the Brisbane City Council's kind of just catching up with everything, and a lot of the band-aid fixes aren't really working. You would have seen the 50% rates increase and different things like that, which I found didn't really support all the stakeholders involved. And we had a problem where to run a short-term rental, you need to have design approval. If it's not in a primary or mixed use zone in Brisbane, at least, even if it's high density, you need to get a design approval to run the property as a business. And a lot of property owners didn't really have that because firstly, the economics didn't add up, but also the rule's been around for a long time and it was never really enforced, right? But we began to find that rule began to get enforced a lot more, and a lot of property owners were just deciding, hey, look, doesn't work for me. It's been great while it lasted, but I've kind of figured out that the economics isn't really there for it. So we were kind of fighting this invisible hand, if you will, of property owners not wanting to get the license, so we can't manage the property anymore. We can bring on more properties, but how far can you fight that battle? It's a bit of a losing battle uphill. So a lot of the people that I speak to in terms of mentors always say, whatever you do now, you want to be doing for the next 40 years, right? Longevity, and just keep showing up, right? So that's where the established structure of long-term rentals was really, really appealing to me. And I'd already seen a bit of the disruption that we had without even realizing it, right? The need for a personalized service in property management where we're not interested in selling your property. We're just here to look after you, right? Get you the highest rental return and actually focus on your asset there. I always use the comparison, right? If you had $1 million in stocks and $1 million in property, you might have the same value of investment, but your stockbroker is looking at, debt to equity ratios, all these different things that I don't know anything about. Your property manager is just collecting rent and organizing maintenance, and yet they have the same value of an asset. So I think the bar's quite low, and people need someone to take their investment a bit more seriously.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely music to my ears.
Yeah.
And I think and I'm probably at the other end of the spectrum now where I still love it, but I'm probably tireder from being in
Mm,
it for 15 years. But I love that you've got some new, fresh energy and ideas, and you're coming in to make a difference,
mm.
not just do it the way that it has always traditionally been done. So talk to me about some of the stuff that you've got set up then in terms of, how you share whatever you want to share in terms of how you're running your business, how you're structured, what's your model. Obviously, communication is a huge part of your business, and
Mm.
that's that service element. So what else are you doing?
Well, I think it comes down to there's a couple different layers to it, right? I think setting expectations in the industry, a lot of people will just take whatever clients they can get, right? And it ends up not being a win-win situation because people, property owners left unsatisfied, property managers maybe left feeling like they're not appreciated or whatever it is. But if you value communication from the start, which I think a lot of interactions in property management are really lacking, right? Just clear checklists and making sure everything is outlined from the beginning, whether you're taking over a management, bringing a new tenant in, any of those types of things. And it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Like it just comes down to, hey, do we have these high definition photos on file? Like little things like that that I see missed sets the precedent for a relationship. So while you can have all the different fancy technologies, the use of them is to empower your front line, which is communicating with the landlords and the tenants.
Absolutely. No,
Mm,
that's good. And so, uh, and I guess the question I'm going to ask is, you don't have like your family weren't in property management. Like I've got two kids in my real estate business now,
mm,
and that's because obviously we're a family-run business. So your family wasn't in real estate, but you've got a few mentors that you've lent on to help guide
mm,
you, which is really, really important. And I wish I had have
mm,
lent on mentors. And just going back to something you said earlier about not really knowing what you were doing when you started. Like I was 37 and I had no idea what I was doing when I started my real
mm.
estate business. So I don't think it really matters what age you're at. If you're starting a new business and in any industry, the important thing is you just get started, hey, and then you work it out as you go.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
no, mum and dad, not really in property. I mean, mum was a chef and now kind of does some online consulting. So I'm actually borrowing some of her podcasting equipment right now. But dad's an architect. So he kind of has some property connections in that regard. And I always get a couple leads, but also great contacts. So great tradespeople and different people like that. Just consultants in the industry is really, really important. But I've found there's an interesting paradox called the Solomon paradox, right? Which talks about how people give better advice than they take themselves. So people, you might give advice to your friend that you won't be taking yourself, but it's because you're looking at it from almost like a third person's perspective. So that's where the value in mentoring, at least I find to be, because I think some of history's greatest people and the greatest people alive at the moment all have mentors. And I think it just comes down to almost like an ego thing where you just need to understand that you don't know everything, right? Even something as simple as what could be looked at as property management, where it's all pretty straightforward. Everyone's human at the end of the day, right? And you you gain a lot from getting perspectives from different people. And I've got, like a legislation coach that I call and just different things like that where I'll confirm, but then also just people running other successful businesses and I can kind of lean on, maybe what might be getting done in a trade industry and how they might approach something in property management. So it's always really useful.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And I like that was it a paradigm you said?
Paradox, yeah.
Paradox, sorry, paradox. That is so true. And I think mentors sometimes will give you the best advice that they know that they should be taking, but they're not actually taking it. And
Mm,
they'll share that with you. So it's a really like a sneaky way to get really good advice, I think, from people who've walked the path before you. So what
Mm.
about, talk to me about some of the lead generation that you're doing. What are you finding that's working? Because you're in Brisbane in
Yep.
southeast Queensland. So talk to me about some of the lead gen that you're finding successful at the moment. If you are anything like me, you think you know your rent roll numbers. Well, I thought I did until I had a rent roll health check, and I was quite literally shocked. The money I was leaving on the table was astounding, and this is not something that I'm proud to admit. There were missed management fees, let fees, advertising, and lease renewal fees not being charged, and properties even without bonds. And all of this was happening despite monthly audits being conducted in my business. So how did I uncover all these gaps in my valuable income? Well, I had a rent roll due diligence from my good friend Tazi, aka the Rent Roll Queen and founder of the Tazi Way, a specialist in rent roll due diligence, business valuation, and management rights. The Tazi Way is the innovative force driving the real estate industry. With 25 years of business and real estate acumen, they find gaps and risks in your agency to find undiscovered value. If you'd like to book your business in for a rent roll due diligence, head to the link in the show notes and mention That Property Mum for a 10% discount. If you're ready to be a super organised, focused and productive property manager, buckle up, because Colmio is about to revolutionise the way that you work. Colmio is the driving force behind property management excellence in residential real estate. Now picture this, a comprehensive end-to-end system designed to be the beating heart of your property management tasks, manage your properties, owners and tenants, and handle payments, inspections, and even marketing listings without leaving the platform. Colmio is designed to be an all-in-one solution to all your property management needs. And here's the game changer. Colmio isn't just software. It's been awarded the most innovative prop tech scale up in 2023. Yes, you heard it right. Colmio has been recognised for their groundbreaking approach to property management software. How good is that? So property managers, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, dive into the future of property management with Colmio. You can book in a demo with the team today and go in their weekly draw for a Prezi gift card worth $100. All you need to do is to head to the link colmio.com/thatpropertymum, and Colmio is Kolmeo.
So it's really interesting because a business coach of mine tells me all the time, know your numbers, right? And I think everyone's heard that before, and especially if you're running a business, you need to know your numbers, but to what degree, right? And I think cold calling, for example, is a really great way to grow a business, but it's also it's a grueling process, I find, right? Like all the successful people always talk about, doing 100 calls a day and 150 calls a day. And that's really great, but when you're doing it, at least I find it quite hard. I think it's maybe just a human thing, a fear of rejection or whatever it is.
is.
So
Yep. It's a mindset.
yeah, exactly right. And putting that in the frame of knowing your numbers, right? So we do on-market calls and we just get that data through CoreLogic, ID for Me, all the different kind of classic tools that are being used at the moment. But then we calculate down to, okay, well, how much revenue is generated per phone call, even if they don't pick up. If we look at the last 500 calls we've made, the last 5 properties we've signed or different things like that. So of the last 500 calls we've made, how many have been signed, how many were interested, and how long did it take? So just taking notes on every single call, and we just do it in Excel, right? Google Sheets. It's all pretty straightforward, but I'm a bit of a numbers focused guy, and then it's motivating to be able to see, okay, well, every phone call that we make $7 in upfront cash, right? If it might take us 100 phone calls or 101 phone calls, around about is actually the figure at the moment. But on average, it's $7 that we'll make in upfront cash, and then we've got a number for equity. So that might be $57 per phone call is equity added to the rent roll. So I think it's a really great way to look at it like that, because then you're almost getting the immediate feedback. Oh, let's quickly just make $200 or something like that. And they also talk about something like doing the dishes, right? And how it's, or even like tying your shoelaces, right? In your head, it's something that you don't want to do, but if you timed it, it's like 10 seconds or 10 minutes or things like that. So timing, hey, how quickly can I just quickly do 10 cold calls? And then having the numbers at the end to go, okay, I think we calculated the other day, we signed 5.27% of every on-market property owner who picks the phone up, who's been on the market for over 7 days.
Oh, that's great.
Mm.
That's good to know those. Yeah, that keeps you motivated. And you're right, though, it is an arduous task. I'm not a big fan of cold calling, although I have
Yeah.
done it for years and years. And it was definitely the mindset, that fear of rejection that I despised. But it was also the it's not like it's not fun. Like for me, I'm more
Mm.
creative. I would much rather be making the nice flyer or documents or digital documents that we would send to them after we get the client. I would
Mm.
rather be spending my time and energy doing that. But if you're not getting the leads in the door, then you're not going to ever be sending off those reports. So, but and you're right, data is very important, and I think everybody is different. Like there's lots of people in the industry now who rely 100% on social media to get. They don't
Mm.
do any cold calling. They don't do any letters. It's all through their social media profile and presence that they're getting all their leads and their business. So
Mm.
I guess you have to know yourself and what you feel more comfortable doing as well. So do you use social media as well, or is that something that you're looking at next?
Yeah, looking at next for the time being, I think I'm very much playing to my strengths at the moment. But property management, from what I've found, and I feel like you might agree with this, is a very versatile business model. And I always find it interesting to see people's personalities almost shine through their business, right? So you see all different types of property management rent roles being run, and you can see just by the way of their lead generation or their marketing strategies, the actual owner of the business and their personality. So it's definitely something I've got to explore more, but I'm very sure that it would be a powerful method of lead generation.
Absolutely. And I think sharing your story as well is really will be really important for you as you continue your journey in property management, because I take my hat off to you. I think it's amazing, and there is definitely a space in the industry right now with so many property managers that have exited the
Mm.
industry. There's definitely space for this new breed of entrepreneurs with high energy, high enthusiasm, that love the numbers, love the
Mm.
relationships. I think there is, and want to start their own businesses, and it is really a great business to have, not only in terms of cash flow, but it's also in terms of asset building and having something to sell at the end of the day. There's not too many businesses that you're going to get. I think one of my coaching clients I met with the other day, and she's just got 180 managements, I think,
Mm.
on her own, based on the Sunshine Coast. And she is generating over 200,000 a year in income,
Mm.
and she's never been to university. What other job is she going to get that she's going to be able to earn, and then that sort of money, but then 5x that when it comes to selling the
Yeah.
the actual asset that she's got. So
Exactly. I always say we're in the golden age of property management. Whenever I see people and we end up talking about this topic, I call it the golden age of property management, because you're right. Like anyone can just invest the time into getting a real estate license and learn a bit about property management. And you've got 20 or 15 properties just in your local network, right? And at the right management fee, that's enough to get, an income going just from the letting fees in the beginning and things like that. So I think it's very powerful. And if you look at other markets, right, like these numbers might be a bit off, but Victoria has double the amount of people, but half the amount of property management companies as Queensland. So there's obviously something going on in Queensland It's almost like a bit of a gold rush,
Yeah. I think also Victoria's got the lowest management fees as well
Exactly.
in Australia. So yeah, which is interesting, isn't it?
Mm,
Australia, Perth, Western Australia's got the highest management fees at the moment, and I think South Australia might be next. But and Queensland's kind of I think around that 7.7% is the average in Queensland at the moment. So, but yeah, and I guess all those different like numbers and the competition and stuff. And I think a lot of people get scared off by competition, but I think competition's great because it elevates you. It
mm,
makes you want to be. I'm slightly competitive, but I also want to be better. And
mm.
how can I be better if there's lots of quality around me? How can I do better? What can I, what's out there to make me better? So, do you have that sort of same philosophy, like that? You're driven by not you're driven by abundance, not that kind of lack
Mm.
mentality.
Yeah, very much so. I think, well, firstly, a competitive market is an innovative one, right? So competitive is always a very good attribute to have in a market, I find, especially when, like you say, there's so much abundance, right? Like I speak with other property management companies, like the business owners, and they're always so willing to share their insights and, ways that they're generating business because I don't even think some of the biggest guys have 1% market share. Like there's so much business out there and it's just getting better and better. Like it's a very fertile playing field. There's very fertile soil, I think is the good way to put it.
Yeah, I always say as well, I think once upon a time, the big agencies really dominated in real estate because of their collective buying power in the newspapers. The newspapers would be full of all their advertising, and smaller agencies just could not compete with that. So that brand awareness, when everybody was reading newspapers, was really powerful.
Mm,
But with the event of all the new technology and the software platforms, realestate.com and domain, it's really leveled those playing fields, and anyone from startups to independent to multiple office independents, we can all compete with the big brands now. So there's nothing really stopping anyone, like you said, going out, getting their real estate license and starting managing properties.
mm,
And it's
exactly.
not all bad. Like it gets a bad rap though, property management,
It
but
does, yeah.
and I'm sure you probably had a lot of people, did you, when you first said, "Are you going to do property management?" Like saying, "Oh my God, don't do it." Is
Mm,
that right?
yeah.
And what has your experience been in terms of, going against that advice?
Well, I think it depends on what you're doing it for, right? I've a lot of that I get the whole, oh, I'd I'd rather be chewing glass than doing property management. I think a lot of that comes from other people in the real estate industry, sales agents and things like that. And I think it's because the typical real estate office, the sales arm is what gets all the praise and all the best resources. Property management's more of that database for future sellers. When you think of real estate, you just think of buying and selling, right? The property management's a bit kind of forgotten about, but I think it's a very rewarding industry. I don't look at it like a sales office. I look at it as like a business with a client base, and business is all relationships, right? And I think people in the industry seem to forget that. Real estate, there's a bit of like a growth for the sake of growth mindset. But if you look at the best performing guys, all they're doing in property management at least is doing the basics at scale, which is relationships, making sure those checklists are done, and putting the customer for first. If it doesn't matter if you know a small little issue comes up of 10, 20, $100, if we sort that out first and then we figure out who's responsible. But it's the people are human beings at the end of the day, and the relationships what's more important. Like in the short-term rental industry, the value of a review was a couple $100, right? Like the difference between
Sure.
a five-star property and a four-star property was 9% revenue generation. So if you know a guest is going to leave a one-star review, you've got $200, $300 to spend to turn that 1-star review into a 3-star, into a 5-star review, right? So people do seem to forget that. And I think that comes from the mindset of scarcity that we were talking about, right?
Mhm.
When you realize that there's so much business out there, and if you just focus on client-focused business, then the the industry is your oyster, you know?
Yeah, it'll all fall into place. I love that. I think that's really, really solid advice from somebody so young. That's absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. That it, and you've got to do your little, sorry, you've hit the nail on the head with that client focus,
Mm.
but also just following your own systems and processes. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Find whatever works for you, whether that's cold calling, whether that's, social media or Google ads or SEO or whatever you're most comfortable doing, but make sure you're doing something.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
focusing on that lead generation your marketing should always be focused on that lead generation element of growing your business. So that's amazing. Tell me, one of the questions I always ask everybody is, what is a personal development tool, resource, checklist, podcast, something that you could share with our audience that's helped you maybe?
Well, I think That Property Mum would probably be my first recommendation. But after that, I think I had to do a sneaky little plug there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think finding your rhythm is really important because especially like real estate, it's kind of all on you, especially if you're not working for an office where there's like a leadership structure you can follow. Finding your rhythm is really important. So for me, that's waking up early and getting all the urgent tasks just done, kind of hitting the tennis ball into someone else's court. So then I can then spend the 9 to 5 period where it's business hours, actually making those phone calls, building relationships, doing cold calls, things like that. So that's what works for me. Some people, it might be staying up late and getting all their things out of the way, or it might be doing things on the weekends. But finding your rhythm, at least for me, works well because exercise in the morning, clear head, and sometimes I find when I kind of fall out of whack of that is when something might be forgotten, or I might not make the best management decision. And so my rhythm is, I guess, a kind of secret ingredient, secret sauce, if you will.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a morning routine as well.
Mm,
Getting up, absolutely exercising, you know, and organization for me is a big one. If I'm not organized and planned out my day, I can easily get distracted and not be productive and look for excuses to put off doing anything, especially my cold calls. So
yeah.
that's really, really valuable advice. Now, Chester, how can anyone who might want to reach out to you, who might be thinking about starting up their own business, they might want a bit of mentorship from you, how can
Yeah.
they best get in touch with you?
So we've got our Instagram, which is Toohey PM. You can find us on there. We're growing that at the moment, the Instagram. You can also reach me directly on my email, which is chester@tooheypm.com. So Toohey spelled Toohey. And then my mobile number, which is 0456 000 281. Always available on the phone. I like to kind of get back as soon as I can. 10-minute kind of turnaround there, which is super important in the industry, I've found.
Yes.
But I mean, Instagram would be the first place.
Perfect. I will share all those links in the show notes with everybody. Thank you so much. You've been a breath of fresh air, and I
Ah,
wish you all the best. I really have loved connecting with you, and I look forward to following your journey.
thanks very much, Kylie. I appreciate it.
Can I ask you a quick favour before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate, and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow, or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.